Hey friend, Chris here from Logic Pro Rules. After about almost 8 years of running this channel and website and about 17 years of producing, recording, mixing music, I want to share with you the one technique that has changed everything for me. But I'm going to warn you, you're not going to like the answer because it's not a key command, it's not a plugin, it's not even really a technique. Now, a quick heads up, I am getting over a cold, so I sound a little funny, but I thought this was too important not to share. Let me set the stage for you. Back in 2008, I purchased a used MacBook off of Craigslist, and a buddy of mine hooked me up with a copy of Logic Pro 8. And at this moment, I thought to myself, I'm never going to need a recording studio again. I'll never have to pay someone to record my music, right? Because I had everything I needed. The computer, the DAW, eventually I would get speakers and microphones and an interface, but I could record to my heart's content, and I didn't have to pay for the time. And this buddy who hooked me up with Logic Pro 8, he was the one who inspired all this because months prior, he came by and recorded my band at the time with his Mac and Logic Pro and a set of microphones and an interface. He brought the studio to our rehearsal space, and that blew my mind. I had no idea this was a possibility. So I dug right in. I started recording my own songs with drums, bass, guitars, vocals right in the house. I would record drums in the living room and guitars in a closet upstairs and vocals in the basement because, that made sense. And then I tried to apply mixed processing to get my songs to release ready. I knew you had to use EQ, compression, reverb. I had no idea how to use them, but I knew these were processors that were necessary, so I tried my best with headphones, with speakers. And to be honest, the results were heartbreaking at best. I would finish my song after a month or two of mixing it because I was just trying to hold on to whatever I could. I felt like I was in a tornado. And then when I would play my song compared to other songs in my genre, I was like, man, this sounds hideous. I would show it to friends and they would go, yeah, it sounds okay. So you knew it wasn't good. Then years later, I lived in New York City for a few years, working at the busiest coffee shop. And I decided, you know what? I got to figure out my next step. So I know folks pay for mixing and recording because I used to do that. Maybe they'll pay me, even though at that time I still didn't know what I was doing. I even got clients and all I had was a single mono speaker and a pair of headphones and a MacBook. That's it. And I got folks to pay me. I had a band pay me $100 to mix their EP. And the results were so bad. They tried to work through with plenty of notes like, hey, Chris, we think this, we think that. And it took me so long and it was so bad that this $100 mix project, they just stopped responding to me. I mean, that's as bad can be. I failed hard on that project, but I kept going. And I'm going to give myself a pat on the back for that one because we're 17 years later, almost 20 years later, and I'm still doing the thing. I'm really proud of myself for that one. However, along the way through those years, I just thought, you know what? I just need better gear. I need plugins. I never have considered spending money on plugins. Maybe I should do that. So I got my very first plugin purchase was the Waves Renaissance Max bundle, which is amazing. At that time, it was such a significant investment for me. And a couple years after, I haven't touched those plugins since. I haven't installed them on any Mac in my possession for years. So it wasn't the plugins, but I just kept thinking, if I get this, then I'll finally achieve the results I'm after. Fast forward to 2017, and I start Logic Pro Rules. At this point, I'm feeling confident. It's about 9 years later, and I feel like I know the ins and outs of Logic Pro pretty well. I love the application. I love what it does for my creativity. And I feel like I know enough about producing, mixing, recording that I can help others. Some might argue I was maybe a little too confident, dangerously knowledgeable, because at the end of the day, I was still learning too, 9 years later. However, through the years, I've been able to interact with all sorts of Logic users from all over the place, see inside the projects of Logic users, and I'm seeing the same behaviors, the same beliefs that I experienced in my early years, which is folks with tons of plugins that they've purchased and, their plugin folders are just stacked, and yet they're still struggling with the fundamentals of recording, mixing, editing, producing. Or they feel like they have to get all their ducks in a row. Like they need to know every single thing about Logic Pro before they can make a move on their music and their creativity. And at the end of the day, I'm kind of haunted by the fact that so many folks are still looking for that magic bullet for their productions instead of, digging deep and really understanding the fundamentals and really getting their heads around that. So what was the technique that changed everything for me, that broke me out of this cycle? Well, I stopped looking for shortcuts, and I just treated Logic Pro like it was an instrument that I needed to learn. I don't think anybody expects to buy a guitar, watch a couple of YouTube videos, and suddenly be a virtuoso just shredding on guitar. We recognize that instruments require practice. However, when it comes to a DAW, we expect plugins, presets, AI to carry us the rest of the way. And, in this day and age, anyone can make music, but it doesn't mean it's going to be good music. If you want to achieve something that sounds great, whether it's just for yourself or to share with others, it requires effort. And committing to mastery of your tools, of your DAW, of the craft, that's going to carry you the rest of the way. Now, I get it. You might not have time to work in Logic Pro every single day, right? And in between sessions, when you do have time, you probably have forgotten some stuff. However, if you only picked up your guitar once a month, you probably forget some chords too, because that's how an instrument works. You got to work at it to build the muscle memory. And now we have this promise of AI where you just type in your creative idea into a prompt and boom, it spits out a brilliant idea based on what you said. But here's my take on AI when it comes to music. Think about it like junk food, like fast food. Like you could eat chips and Doritos and burgers all day, every day. And yeah, you might get that full feeling like, oh, I'm so full. But at the end of the day, are you satiated in a way that's building a healthy, resilient, and strong body? I'm not anti-AI, but for me, AI is similar. It's like you just type in a prompt, your idea, it spits it out, and then you feel good for like half a second. And then the idea is just as forgettable as before. There was no effort on either end. And so that idea is just going to kind of bring you no satisfaction, because the satisfaction comes from working at your creative ideas, putting in the time and effort, building the skills, and seeing your own growth. It's not the output, it's the experience of music. Now, here's the good news. You don't need to learn everything in Logic Pro, right? Just because I have to crank out a video every week and come up with creative, interesting, intriguing ideas that YouTube will serve to you, you don't need to know it all. Really, you just need to know the fundamentals like recording, take management using take folders, EQ, compression, routing. That's it. Once you learn the core of your instrument, in this case, Logic Pro, you can make professional sounding music today. Everything else is just window dressing. It's just flavor. Think about it. A guitarist who commits 30 minutes a week to a method of learning and practicing his instrument is going to beat anyone playing guitar and just noodling around here and there, off and on, whenever they can, right? That's the difference. So if you're frustrated by your creative experience, your progress when using Logic Pro for your music, ask yourself, am I treating this like it's an instrument that I need to practice? Or am I hoping and waiting for a plugin and app to just fix everything for me? Commit to the fundamentals, treat it like it's an instrument. So thanks so much for the last 8 years. Here's to 8 more. Now go make some music.